Hello and welcome to Fade to Black on CUTV. My name is Erin and I'm here today with Solomon Nagler, who's in Montreal for the Festival du Nouveau Cinéma to present his first feature-length film, Gravity and Grace. Welcome back to Montreal.
Yeah, it's always great to be here.
And welcome to Fade to Black.
Yeah, thanks.
I guess I'll start by asking you how your experience of shooting a first feature was, given that you have, over a decade of making shorts behind you.
Yeah, it was, I'm going to be pretty blunt. It almost destroyed me, I think. It was done with exceptionally strenuous and circumstances that are fairly unusual in the way that you usually shoot a feature film. I knew that with my first feature, I did not want to compromise anything. And often when you're looking for larger budgets, you have to sort of go through various forms of developing your script with various external funding organizations, and I refused to do that. I felt like I had sort of developed a certain way of making work with my short films that was very independent and fairly personal, so I wanted to continue that. So the sacrifice that I made was my health in making this first feature film. It was, I actually lied to the crew and told them that we weren't shooting a feature, and only a few of us knew that we were actually shooting a feature. And about midway through, the director of photography sort of looked at me, and I looked at him, and we just didn't say anything, and he knew what was going on. About 2 winters before I shot this film, I was struggling with my practice. Even though things were going well, I just felt like I had to do something different, and it was a very strange cathartic experience, and I think it's something that all of us should pay attention to. And there's sort of a level of serious dissatisfaction, then there's something very important that's happening internally, and I had to just recognize that I wanted to pretend like I had never made a film before. And I told my close friends, most of whom live in Montreal, because this is really the place where I find I have the most colleagues, people that I'm very close with their own filmmaking practice. And this is really my home of filmmaking, I think, in terms of many filmmakers here that I consider family. And I told them about this experience. I thought I was going mad, and I probably certainly was. But I just really wanted to pretend that I had never made a film before and just start new. But it really isn't that fresh of a start, because I think with this film, it's really a culmination of various things that I've been trying for quite a while. I actually think that a real storyteller is someone who doesn't follow a typical formula of cathartic response and what we understand storytelling to be. The minute that you try to enter into this contract with the viewer, where you gain sort of this traditional sense of empathy with this character through dialogue and through interactions and through conflict and through a fairly conservative arc, I don't consider that filmmaking. It's sort of just you're making a good apple pie, which is great. I love that, and I don't want to diss people that make work like that, but I consider real filmmaking to be something that stretches the form of the way that we understand how we observe things and people, and creating this synthesis between form and content. And what I tried to do with this film was to actually make a non-film in some senses, where what we're dealing with is this people who actually have no interaction with each other, people who have no control of their lives. It's actually a very traditional cinematic idea that was explored by people like Antonioni and Tarkovsky, and it's something that there are other filmmakers that are doing that I have a huge amount of respect for, and it's something that I thought that's a real filmmaker, someone who is really trying to see narrative more as a texture.
And the film was also inspired by the book Gravity and Grace.
Yes.
So how does that work into something that isn't sort of narrative cinema, but is using narrative as a texture?
Yeah, no, it's it's interesting when my first area of study when I was in university was philosophy, but I wasn't a very good philosopher. I enjoyed reading it like I enjoyed reading poetry, but I don't think I really had the analytical skills to really be a proper philosopher. And while I was reading a lot of this work, my undergrad, I always found that I was sort of having these images that would fly up in my mind as I was reading, which actually in some senses had almost nothing to do with what I was reading, but all of a sudden I'd see people and things, you know, almost like a synesthetic experience when I would be reading these passages, these beautiful, poetic, abstract, sometimes nonsensical passages from philosophers. So with Gravity and Grace by Simone Weil, was there were certain philosophical ideas there that I found really fascinating and tried to anthropomorphize them in some way, but in a very, very, very indirect way. In fact, it's probably impossible to identify much in the film that's related to the book, aside from certain intertitles between the two sections of the film. The first section of the film was called Decreation, which is a concept that Simone Weil was writing about, but this idea of how grace emerges through this sense of almost deconstructing yourself.
Thank you very much
thank you. Good.
coming and talking with us.
Okay.
And, we've just been speaking with Solomon Nagler. You're watching Fade to Black, and you can catch Solomon's new film, Gravity and Grace, at the Festival de Nouveau Cinéma. It's playing this Friday at 3 p.m.